Hey out there, and welcome back. This is video number 6 in our Astrology for Sovereignty series. We're going to talk about the houses and the signs and the modalities and the elements in this video. Before we do that, I am going to introduce myself quickly. I'm Paula, aka Mama Berry. I'm the author of Foundations of Spirituality, a guide for the highly energetic, vigorously animated, exuberantly bustling brain. And I'm the owner and operator of thatmamaberrylife.com, which is a spiritual learning community. So you can find us on Facebook and check us out at thatmamaberrylife.com. There's also an intro video going more in depth about who I am and what I'm doing here, so you can check that out. In our last lesson, we reviewed the planets and their characteristics. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the houses, the signs, and their meanings. Like with the planets, we're not going to spend a lot of time going over every single detail, but there is a chart with all of the information that we can use as a cheat sheet because the plan is to learn as we do. So we're going to talk a little bit about houses, signs, modalities, and elements before we begin to put everything together. Let's get started. Each house in the zodiac rules over a specific area of life. Because each house aligns with a specific constellation in the zodiac, both the house and the sign carry similar traits. Aries is the first constellation in the zodiac wheel, so it falls in the first house. The key phrase for Aries is I am. Aries is concerned with the self. The first house is also concerned with the self. It's how you appear in the world, your body, your physical appearance, your vitality. In essence, it is your I am. I am pretty. I am energetic. I am outgoing. I am. But it is not necessarily your core nature. Rather, it's the nature you adhere to and relate to so well that it's kind of your go-to personality as you move through the world. Your core nature is your sun, and those are the traits that we tend to keep under wraps until we're ready to let the world see them, or until we know how to tap into them and effectively showcase them once we feel safe doing so. When the natal chart shifts that sign in the first house, let's say, in our example just for this moment, our rising sign, our ascendant is Taurus. So the natal chart has shifted that zodiac sign that's on the first house, which is Aries, to Taurus, because now we're looking at our personal snapshot, right? Even though you have a Taurus ascendant, you are still going to express your I am. It will simply be expressed through Taurian qualities. Aries tells the first house that it is going to be all about the I am. That's in the zodiac wheel, right? Your natal chart in this example tells your first house that I am Taurus. So that is how you will automatically express yourself. That will appear to be your personality to the outer world. A key point here is that every house in your natal chart, no matter what sign sits at the cusp, is intrinsically associated with the sign that rules that house in the zodiac and its characteristics. Now let's move on to the signs for just a moment. Each constellation or sign in the zodiac wheel carries specific traits and qualities that are summed up by keywords and phrases. They are also assigned attributes called modalities and elements. Modalities, they tell us the job of each sign, and there are 3 modalities. Cardinal, which tells the sign to go. Fixed, which tells the sign to fix in place, and mutable, which tells the sign to let go for transformation. Western astrology is aligned with the seasons, so you can see how the modalities align with seasons as well. Aries, for example, arrives with the spring equinox. It's associated with new beginnings, rebirth, a fresh start. It's a cardinal sign, and that directs us to go, to get started, to move, to begin, to start anew, just like spring, right? Taurus season rolls in about a month after Aries arrives and really kicks off spring. By then, the earth has warmed up. Animal life has begun to nest, and they find mates and procreate, and they begin to live again. Their hibernation period is over. We begin to see life really bloom again. Taurus takes what is blooming and sets it in place to do what it must. Taurus is a fixed sign. Gemini is the third month of spring. By this time, we're firmly grounded in the season. Life is warm and active, and we're outside living and breathing and creating and planting because that is what Taurus, the sign ahead of Gemini, told us to do. But summer will soon be upon us, and Gemini is slowly transitioning us into that new season. It is taking apart the slow awakening of spring, piece by piece, telling us to let go of those unexpected cold nights, infusing us with excitement for the heat of the summer. It warms the ground to prepare it for summer planting. It activates our bodies to receive the joy of the sun and the swell of the ocean. It transitions us into the next phase because Gemini is a mutable sign. The elements describe the quality of each sign. They tell us whether the sign is primarily going to inspire you, which is fire, ground you, which is earth, communicate with you, which is air, or emote with you, which is water. Let's put it together with another chart. But before we do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about it so that we understand what we're about to look at. In a sense, this chart combines multiple aspects that we normally look at separately, but they are inherently attached to one another, like we just discussed. So I put them together so we can kind of look at it as a whole. For example, the first house of the zodiac is associated with the sign of Aries, and Aries is ruled by Mars. Even though the first house has its own job, which is to rule over the self, the physical body, Aries carries highly energetic personality traits like impulsivity and courageous confidence, and Mars is the god of war. These three things are really intrinsically tied to one another. They lend themselves to one another like pieces of the puzzle that make a whole. Aries is a highly energized sign. They can be impulsive, they can move quickly, and they're going to have the courage to do things others might be scared to do, or they will just lack the ability to think things through clearly enough before they go and do it. They're concerned with the self, not with the collective, so their first pit stop is not necessarily to think about how their actions will impact others. They're a cardinal sign, so they go. They initiate, they move, they take action. They are a fire sign, so they are going to take action in a courageous and inspirational way. They will burn through the world with life and force and fire. They are dynamic. The house carries the aspect of the sign it's aligned to in the zodiac wheel. So the first house in the zodiac, it's aligned to the constellation of Aries. And it carries that aspect of Aries being about the self. So Aries lends the idea of the self to that first house. And then the first house roots itself in that area of life that's all about the self. When we look at the natal chart, that first house is still about the self, but the sign ruling over it can be any of the 12 constellations in the zodiac wheel. And it doesn't matter because whatever sign is sitting on the first house cusp will determine the energetic nature of the native because that's what the house does. It is the house of self. I hope that makes sense. And I hope you can kind of see the connection. The sign Aries rules over the first house in the zodiac wheel, and it planted its nature of the self into that house. The first house took that nature of the self and rooted it deeply so that anything in that house, along with the house itself, is all about the self. Where the planets come in is through their attachment to the signs. Aries is ruled by Mars, so if Aries is in the first house, then we say that the first house is ruled by Mars too. Whatever planet rules over the sign also rules over the house that sign is in. And here too we see the commonalities. We see the links. Mars is the god of war. He's aggressive, impulsive, a fiery leader. He goes. These are also the attributes we see echoed in Aries. The planet, however, is not connected to the house the same way the sign is. Here, we are not seeing the planet gently lend any aspect to the house. The planet rules the sign, and thus it rules the house. It imposes its will. So while the sign of Aries lends its nature to the first house, and the house plants those aspects deep within itself, the planet of Mars imposes its will on the first house and influences it to be like the god of war. In the zodiac, everything lines up with ease because the house, sign, and planet all share characteristics in some way, shape, or form. In the natal chart, however, they can sometimes create some interesting times. Like maybe you have Capricorn on your fourth house. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and the fourth house is the house of home and foundations, associated with Cancer in the zodiac, which is ruled by the moon. Cancer naturally wants to be soft and feminine and gentle and nurturing and nourishing. She is the divine feminine. She is intuitive and watery like the moon, and we can see how that can be beneficial to creating a safe and nurturing home environment. But if Saturn is ruling over this house in the natal chart, because Saturn rules over the sign of Capricorn, that changes its nature to one that has strict boundaries. It's not concerned as much with nurturing or nourishing as it might be with controlling and ensuring marching orders are followed. Saturn can restrict the life inside of the home, and so that can be kind of a challenge if that's how the natal chart is set up. Let's go through the chart a bit and see how it fits together so you have an effective cheat sheet. We are going to take a look at the chart that we put together and see how we're going to use this as our cheat sheet while we learn how to study our own natal charts. So, these are all the houses, the signs, the modalities, and the elements like we just discussed. And there's a lot of information packed into this chart. And I've tried to split it out so that it's logical. So the first two columns are about the houses, and you can see that their heading is in yellow. The first column tells us the house number. So house number 1 is right here. And then the second column tells us what that house represents. In this case, house number 1 represents the self, the body, the appearance, the vitality. The second column tells us what that house represents or what area of life it impacts. So those are the first two columns. Now, when we move over to the right that has this green heading, this is about the sign that's attached to that house in the zodiac. Right here, this tells us that we're looking right now at the zodiac characteristics, which means we're looking at the characteristics attached to the sign, not the planet. Planet is connected, right? The planet lends some of its characteristics to the house and to the sign in certain ways. But the planet might impose its will over the house. But this chart is not about the planets. This chart is about the signs and the houses. We have another chart in our last video lesson, video number 5, that gives us all the information that we need about the planets, their characteristics, their purpose, their archetypes, all of that good stuff. We looked at the first house. We know that it's about the self, the body, the appearance, the vitality. The zodiac characteristics tell us that the first house is aligned to the constellation of Aries. And Aries is ruled by Mars. These are the dates for the season of Aries, March 21st through April 19th. This is a key phrase for Aries, I am. These are the personality traits for Aries: adventurous, energetic, courageous, confident, impulsive, daredevil, independent. Then we move on to the modalities. Aries is a cardinal modality. They initiate. And a key phrase for Aries might be, I initiate action. The element for Aries is fire. Fire is inspirational. Fire inspires. It's enthusiastic, it's self-expressive, intuitive, and spontaneous in Aries. The key phrase we might be able to put together for Aries within its modality and element is it takes the initiative, that's the cardinal sign, that demonstrates its personal courage and ability to act on its own inspiration. And that last part is the fire element. Okay? The second house is the house of our assets and our resources and our career. It's about material things. It is about what we value. It is a house associated with money, but it's associated with abundance and the things beyond just money. It's the things that we love. So anything that we love, anything that we value is going to fall into the second house. But it's about the material plane. It's about what we have, our resources. The zodiac sign that the second house aligns to is Taurus. Taurus is ruled by the planet of Venus. So automatically we can understand why the second house is about our material resources and what we value, right? Venus is a planet of love and money and luxuriousness and abundance. It lends those qualities to Taurus. Taurus is very earthly. It is here in the material realm. It is firmly rooted here. So Taurus brings those values down to the material realm. And in this material realm, we tend to value money. We use money as the foundation of our economy. And we also have traded in the past, right? And we do trade still. So we trade time for money. We trade a chicken for medical care, or whatever we value, we find a way to acknowledge that value in our resources. So the second house is about bringing those material resources down to earth. The Taurus season runs from April 20th to May 20th. Its key phrase might be I have or I value. Some of its characteristics are patience. It's reliable, persistent, grounded, secure, because our assets help us remain secure in this world, right? It's possessive. It holds on to things. It's inflexible. Taurus is the bull, right? And it is self-indulgent because remember Venus, luxurious, love, money. That's Taurus. Taurus is a fixed sign. Again, it's the bull. You're not going to mess with the bull. Fixed signs stabilize action. So we've already had Aries come before us and initiate the season of spring. It began spring for us, right? It began the action. That's what the first house is about. It tells us who our self is going to be. And then here comes the second house, tells us what we have and what we value. And we're moving further into the spring season. In fact, Taurus firmly plants us in that season, right? It fixes us there. It stabilizes us. So that key phrase for the modality of Taurus might be I stabilize through the power of the material world. And then when we look at the element, of course, Taurus is associated with the element of Earth because it's about the material realm that we live in, which is the planet Earth, right? It is grounding, stabilizing. It manifests. A key phrase that shows how Taurus works within its modality and element might be it develops security through stabilizing, which is the fixed element, its resources and developing them into fertile fields from which it can provide much abundance. That last part is the element of earth. So that is the second house. We're going to do one more house, maybe two. We'll do two more houses so that you can kind of see how the seasons go together. The third house is about communication, daily life, siblings, and extended family. And I apologize that the chart headings might be a little bit messed up. I will fix that before I send it out. The third house is aligned to Gemini in the zodiac wheel, and Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury. So again, Mercury, we've already talked about the planets in our last lesson. We know Mercury is all about communication. Mercury is the messenger of the gods. So Mercury has lent that aspect of itself to the third house and also to Gemini, right? A key phrase for the zodiac sign of Gemini might be I think. They are intelligent, adaptable, communicative, intellectual, nervous, superficial, cunning, and inquisitive. They are a mutable sign. Mutable signs let go to prepare us for what is coming next. And in this case, Gemini's key phrase for the modality that it lives within might be I give information. Its element is air, which is communicative. It's intellectual, focused on facts, ideas, and communication. The key phrase that shows how the sign of Gemini might act or display itself within its modalities and elements is it disperses information, which is mutable air, connecting to many through intellectually stimulating exchanges that generate new ideas and relationships. So, those are the first three houses, and that actually represents the first 3 months of the season of spring, right? Western astrology is aligned with the spring equinox. And I'm making a point of this because we just began the spring equinox anew. And this is a really good opportunity to kind of tie the information together so that it makes sense to you in a deeper way. We're going to go over one more row because those first 3 rows brought us through the spring season. House number 4, which is ruled by Cancer in the zodiac wheel, is all about parents, home, and foundation, and that's the house that moves us into summer. Cancer is ruled by the moon. Its season runs from June 22nd to July 22nd, and its key phrase might be I feel. I feel. Some of the characteristics for Cancer are sensitive, caring, emotional, intuitive, imaginative, shrewd, cautious, protective, moody, clinging, unable to let go, nurturing, nourishing. It is inherently associated with the divine feminine mother, right? That's what the moon lends to the sign of Cancer. Cancer is a cardinal sign. So here again, we are starting over. Cardinal signs initiate. And we already know we're starting something new because Cancer is the beginning of the summer season. So it makes sense that Cancer is a cardinal sign. It's the start of summer. The key phrase that represents that might say, I initiate emotional bonds, because Cancer is cardinal. It's initiating what it's associated with, emotional bonds. Its element is water. Again, watery, intuitive nature, divine feminine, nourishing, nurturing. It's emotive, it's sensitive, it's responsive. So the key phrase that might display how the sign of Cancer acts or expresses itself through its modalities and elements is I initiate familial bonds through demonstrating care. So the initiate part is the cardinal modality, and demonstrating care is the water element. So when we begin to analyze our personal natal charts, we'll be using these tools. I'll show you how to use them to piece together information for yourself. But our next lesson is going to be about focal points, because when you're looking at your natal chart, the first question might be, where do we start? We'll talk more about that in the next video. But for right now, I want to just remind you, don't get too caught up in the details when you're looking at these tables. You don't need to, unless that's what you want to do. You don't need to sit down and read over every aspect. The goal is to understand the overall concept, and then when you're working, follow the instructions to kind of fill in the gaps for your own natal chart. That's how you start in astrology. That's how you get started. You don't get bogged down with all the details, and you don't worry about memorizing everything because it's going to take a while to memorize. But if you do the work, eventually you will remember it because it's just going to start coming to you. Okay? So I think that's all I have for this lesson. I know that's all I have. Until next time, go out, get your whole life, and remember all the love all the time. Bye.